Hello everyone, welcome back to the pod. I'm so happy to have you here. It is episode 2, and today we are talking about rest and rest as worship. This is something that has continuously struck me as I've been starting to read through the Old Testament. It comes up time and time and time again in a way that never really hit me before, and we have to talk about it because all summer long, God has just convicted me about rest. So I'm gonna start with that little story and then we'll jump into like the Bible, but just to give you some background of like where I'm at personally. So I'm working on writing my debut novel right now. If you're unaware, I'm having the time of my life. It's so much fun, very exciting. But I have set some deadlines for myself. They are, flexible deadlines, but I need to have some sort of deadline so that I actually can get this book out in a timely manner. And by that, I mean a year and a half from now. I first started taking writing like really seriously last October, so a year ago. And at first, as I was getting into it, I really had to be diligent about like, I'm gonna write so many hours a week. And like, that's my goal. Now, it has become, if I don't make a schedule for myself, I will write from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. Like, I cannot stop. I can't stop. It's crazy. I feel like a crazy person. I just want to be writing all the time. And, it's been causing some issues for me off and on because I just live in fantasy land. And then, I don't work for 2 days and then I go to work and I'm just like, what? This is the real world out here? Like, I wish I was joking. I wish that was hyperbole. That is very real. Like, I lose the concept of the world I actually live in. It's insane. Anyway, the timing of all of this has been just really wonderful, that God is like, hey, what you're going to read for the next couple months, I'm going to be talking a lot about the importance of rest. And so I started this rule for myself. Okay, if I'm treating writing like it's my job, then I need to take 2 days off a week. They don't have to be 2 days in a row, but they have to be 2 days off in a week. And as, I got in the habit of that, I realized, hey, I also work part-time in retail. So one of my days off of my retail job needs to be the same as one of my days off of my writing job. So that day I just get to read and sew and what have you. And those days, guys, are so incredibly amazing. I honestly, I'll be real with you, have not done it in a couple weeks, and I'm feeling it. I really need to. So this Saturday is going to be my complete rest day. I'm very excited for it because it's been crazy, and I am feeling a little overwhelmed right now with my next writing deadline. I don't know how I'm gonna meet it, but I know that means I have to actually take a step back and rest instead of like keep pushing, because I probably worked, at least 5 hours yesterday on it, and it was just insane. So anyway, that's a big reason that I started this podcast, actually, was because I was like, okay, I need to spend less time writing, but I know if I don't like fill that time with something else, I'm just going to keep writing. So that's where this podcast comes in, because guess what? What is a better use of my time than talking about the Lord, sharing who He is and what He's done in my life? That's why we're here. And today we're gonna talk about rest. I did talk about this in my newsletter back in June, and I accidentally gave some misinformation, so my apologies. But the point is still the same. My stats were just wrong, so bear with if you were a part of that newsletter. Okay, let's jump in. Let me start the timer. So we're jumping ahead. I know we were just in Genesis. We're going to jump ahead to almost the end of Exodus. So Exodus is when the Israelites, they've been oppressed by the Egyptians. God sends the 10 plagues. He frees them. They're wandering in the wilderness. And Moses and God start having some serious conversations about how life is going to work as the Israelites being the people of God. And so after the flood is when, sorry, I'm jumping back in the timeline again. After the flood in Genesis, Noah's Ark, Noah's flood, after that is when God introduces the death penalty. And he's like, hey, if a man kills another man, then that man will be killed by the hand of man as well, because you can't just kill people. In Exodus, we get a lot more crimes that are deserving of capital punishment. One of them, of course, is just a reminder that, hey, if you murder someone, you're gonna die too. So Exodus 21:12 through 17 has a bunch of I think it's like three crimes befitting capital punishment. One is that he who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. What's interesting, though, is God does make a differentiation between, like, I accidentally killed this guy. It was not premeditated. It was just some freak accident, and now he's dead. That if that happens, you don't deserve the death penalty. God actually instructs the Israelites, once they move into the land he has promised them, to set up cities specifically for these people to flee to and, like, live. It's very interesting. Anyway, but yeah, if you, like, purposefully set out to kill someone, then you get the death penalty for that. If you strike your father or mother, you shall surely be put to death. If you kidnap a man, whether you sell him or he's found in your possession, shall surely be put to death. And he who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. That one was really interesting, because, like, people talk trash about their parents all the time. And granted, I don't know all the connotations and, like, the meaning behind the word curses here. Like, is it something to do with witchcraft, or is it truly just like, I curse you, you know? I don't know that, because it doesn't matter to me, because I love my parents. So moving on. So that sets up, like, okay, the cursing the parents is, like, kind of strange to us, but the rest we can kind of get behind, you know? Like, okay, yeah, killing someone, that's pretty bad. If you, like, hurt someone and you kidnap them, that's pretty bad. But then if we skip ahead, chapter 22, it talks about sorceresses. They're not allowed to live. Whoever lies with an animal shall surely be put to death. He who sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be utterly destroyed. These are the other things that the death penalty is fit for. If we jump ahead to 31, chapter 31, I was shook. I could not believe it. This is what it says. But as for you, speak to the sons of Israel, saying, you shall surely observe my Sabbaths. For this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you. Therefore, you are to observe the Sabbath, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death, for whoever does any work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his people. For 6 days work may be done, but on the 7th day there is a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall surely be put to death. He says that twice. Oh, yeah, if you work on the Sabbath, you should die. All of these other ones I just read to you, it's a one-off. Hey, if you do this, you're gonna die. If you do this, you're gonna die. If you do this, you're gonna die. This one, he's like, no, like, I need to make sure you understand this. If you work on the Sabbath, you'll die. Okay, the Sabbath is holy, so if you work on the Sabbath, you're gonna die. I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. He continues, the sons of Israel shall observe the Sabbath to celebrate the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. It's a sign between me and the sons of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, but on the 7th day he ceased from labor and was refreshed. This made me contemplate my life choices so much. I have heard pastors preach that Jesus abolished the Sabbath and we have no need to observe the Sabbath anymore. But here's the thing. The Sabbath was part of the 10 Commandments, and we as a church believe all the 10 Commandments are still valid. So why is the Sabbath day not? I think people get hung up on this passage with Jesus talking to the Pharisees, and he's like, man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath was made for man. And the Pharisees in that time used the Sabbath as a way to show their own righteousness. They were like, oh, I am so holy because I don't do any work, and look at me resting so good. I'm the most righteous man ever. And they enforced Sabbath laws to make people feel bad about themselves and just make them feel better about themselves. It was a whole thing that was not at all what God ever intended for it to be. The Sabbath is meant to show that it's the Lord who sanctifies us. It's not our own work that makes us worthy of God and his love and heaven, okay? It's God alone. And so resting from all these things we have to do reminds us that, hey, this is not the end goal. I am not striving to be successful here on earth because this is all there is. I'm doing work because God has given us work to do, and it's a good thing. And I want to make the most of my time here on earth, but at the end of the day, I'm a child of God, and he is the one who has made me his child. Nothing I did. What a shift in mindset. And I'm telling you right now, the times that I have rested and been diligent about, hey, I need to take a step back from all this earthly work stuff I'm doing and just chill and enjoy the day. The next day, feel like I've been on a week-long vacation. I cannot tell you how mind-blowing it is to have a day of complete rest. And God set it up. He set it up that way so that we could be reminded we cannot do anything by our own power. That whole rise and grind, get on the grind, have a side hustle, have another side hustle, work your day job and come home and work some more for your side hustle. Hustle culture has literally killed people because we are not designed to work all the time. We're designed to rest. God is the one who never rests. God does not sleep or slumber. He rested on the seventh day to set an example for us, but God is always working. When you get that and you're like, this is so important. Rest is so important that if I work, I deserve to die. Guys, it's changed my life. Now, granted, I did start this podcast saying, hey, I haven't rested in a while, but I can tell now, hey, I haven't rested in a while, and I need to. I can feel it now. Before it was oh, I just gotta go. And now it's oh, it's been 2 weeks since I've had a complete rest day, and I really, really need one. Progress, Okay, so maybe you're okay, well, does anyone actually ever die for working on the Sabbath? Because that sounds crazy. Yeah, someone does. Also 35, just 3-4 chapters after what I just read to you, God again is hey, just a reminder, for 6 days work must be done, but on the seventh day you shall have a holy day, a day of Sabbath rest to the Lord. Whoever does any work on it shall be put to death. Just in case you forgot. Because this dude in Numbers 15, here's what it says. Now while the sons of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation, and they put him in custody because he had not been declared what should be done to him. And then the Lord said to Moses, this man shall surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp. So the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him to death with stones, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Isn't that a lovely story? Doesn't that make you just feel so good? Gathering sticks, and he died for that? Such a brutal way to die. But here's the thing that God talks about a lot when he's hey, if this happens, this is the punishment. He usually follows it up, especially in Deuteronomy, with, and once people see that you're serious about this being the punishment for this thing, they're not going to ever do it again because they're going to be terrified. And that helps it make a little more sense, to me at least. If you never think the punishment is real, then you never think it's really that big of a deal to do the thing that you're not supposed to do. And so God has to enforce this law. There are plenty of times in the Bible we see God is like merciful and doesn't enforce the death penalty on people. But you can't just, make rules and then never follow through on them. That's terrible parenting. Everyone knows that. So God is going to be a good parent to his children. And he's like, this is the way I expect you to act. And like, I'm going to follow through on that. So there you go. Something so interesting back in Leviticus. We're going to go back to Leviticus 23. In this chapter, God is laying out all of the holy times throughout the year. And like, these are the days that I want you to mark off as holy to the Lord. And he so many times is like, hey, when you observe this day or this week or whatever it is, it's marked by a day of complete rest. It's marked by a day of Sabbath. And I was just like mind blown that every single time we have a day holy to the Lord, we are resting. But it makes sense. It makes sense because if we go back to Exodus, he says resting on the Sabbath shows that the Lord is the one who sanctifies you. And so if every day that's holy to the Lord, we are resting from our work. It's such a physical act of our faith that like, God, you are doing everything for me. You are the one working out my salvation. I am not. It is not of me. And that's so beautiful. Like, what is brilliant. God was so smart to do that and to set it up like that. Yeah, so if we just really quick look through 23, guys, there's so many times he says, hey, you should have rest. Verse 3, Sabbath of complete rest, you shall not do any work. Verse 7, you shall not do any laborious work. Verse 8, you shall not do any laborious work. Verse 21, you shall do no laborious work. 24, you shall have a rest. 25, you shall not do any laborious work. 28, you shall not do any work on this same day. 30, as for any person who does any work on this same day, that person I will destroy from among his people. You shall do no work at all. It is to be a perpetual statute throughout your generations in all your dwelling places. It is to be a Sabbath of complete rest to you, and you shall humble your souls. And that's the thing I think it really gets at. Like, you have to humble yourself. Where does your success come from? Is it from your work? Is it from accomplishing all of these things? And you're like, yes, that makes me an amazing person, and I'm so successful. Or is it like, no, I have everything I need. Like, the good life is me living in relationship with the Lord because he has called me his own. That's also a big lesson God has been teaching me this year, especially the first half of this year. It was just like, why do you put so much stock in your earthly measures of success? Because you're not going to take any of those things with you. So, like, who cares if the lady at the store you work at roasted you for being 25 and being a cashier part-time? Because she doesn't think you're doing anything with your life. Our worth comes from God, and that is what the Sabbath rest is supposed to remind us of. Rest, when it's like that, rest becomes a very real act of worship. So much, even in college, when I was a Christian education major, resting on the Sabbath was marketed as this like, oh, it's just how we're designed. Like, we need to take breaks because it's good for us. And like, yeah, it is. But it's not just about taking a break. It's about taking that time to remember God is the one. God is the one who makes any of this possible, who has granted me salvation. It's God. It's God. It's God. It is not me. It is him alone. So rest, guys. Rest. It's so important. It's so important. And not rest because, oh, look at me. I worked so hard and now I have free time and blah, blah, blah. No, you're resting so you can be with God. And listen, like my days of complete rest, I do feel like I have to specify, I'm not like in prayer reading my Bible for 12 hours all day long. It's like I just do chill stuff that I don't have time to do in my other days. I read, I sew, I sing, like whatever you like, the things you're like, oh, I wish I could do that, but I never have any time. Those are the things you do on your day of complete rest. The things that are like enjoyable and gonna refresh you. And yeah, also you should spend time with God, but you know, it's not like you have to like be in church for 12 hours during the, you get what I'm saying. Anyway, yeah, go have some rest. It might just change your life. I'm just saying. And if you're like, I don't have time, I'm telling you, like, it has created a shift in my soul, I guess, that when I start to have the thoughts of I don't have enough time, I know now that is when I have to take a break, which sounds counterintuitive, but it works every time. So there you go. Hey, the podcast has an Instagram account now. It's called that'smygod.pod. And I'd love it if you followed over there. It will help spread the word about this podcast, because I just want people to be so hype about following the Lord, because God is the coolest and the Bible actually slaps. So yeah, I will see you guys in 2 weeks. We're doing every other Friday for season 1. Might change later on, but that's the schedule right now. And that's all I have for you guys today. So yeah, go rest. Go hang out with God. Okay? Because he's the coolest. Cheers. Bye.